If you're jumping straight into EQ and compression when starting to mix a vocal, you're missing the part that makes a huge difference. Before I mix any vocal, and it doesn't matter if it's a pop, rock, worship, or jazz vocal, I always go through a quick prep phase. And that's the kind of thing that the pros always take the time to do. And the cool thing is that most of what I'm going to show you in today's video that I do in Cubase can be done in any DAW. But if you work in Cubase, you'll know how fast you can mix prep your vocals. All right. Let's do it. Now, the first thing I do before adding an EQ, and especially before adding compression, is to level up the vocal as far as the dynamics goes, to bring the quieter part and the loudest part of the vocal closer together. And how I do this is with clip gain automation. And this is basically what I do to gain stage my vocal, for that matter. So the first thing I'm going to do is to have a quick listen. Now, this is completely dry, no effects whatsoever. Now I know right away that my level, my general level, is good. And from this point, this is going to be one of the rare occasions where mixing with my eyes is going to be useful, because by only looking at the waveform I have on this audio event, I know right away where my loudest parts are, okay? I know that this guy right here is quite loud compared to the first couple of lines of that vocal take. So I'm gonna need to bring them closer together. So I'm gonna right away bring those down. I'm just gonna select that part right here. And in Cubase 14, it's so easy. You take the range selection tool, you select the part of the vocal you wanna bring down or up, and there you go. You just bring it down and that's it. No need to cut events and stuff like that, you know. So I'm going to bring those down to begin with. Same with this guy right here. So I briefly do these kind of moves. Even this guy on its own is a bit louder, but something else I can do in Cubase, if you're on Cubase 14, of course, by keeping active your range selection tool, you press on Shift and Command if you're on Mac, or Shift and Control on PC. And by hovering over those waveforms, you will see Cubase selecting those separately, which is quite useful. And from this point, let's say I want to bring down this guy right here. I just need to go right on top. And there you go. I click on that little icon and I bring that segment down. It's that simple. So right now, I'm actually pretty close to what I want to end up with. I'm going to bring that last part a bit lower, and maybe the beginning of the take just a bit louder. And from this point, I just listen. You know, I go through all those little transitions, and I make sure it's constant, you know, as far as the levels goes. Now, I don't need to do more than that. The compressor or compressors are going to take care of the rest. And that is why I like to do some pre-gain automation before adding compression. I want my compressors to work in a very stable way. I don't want them to go out of whack and work too hard on only a few vocal lines that are way too loud to begin with. So that's why I get better control, better compression, and a very nice, stable vocal sound. Next is manual de-essing, okay? And this is something I do almost all the time, especially if I'm working with a vocal that has lots of sibilants. Doing it manually before adding a de-esser on my vocal chain is something I like to do, especially on those S's that are like way too loud to begin with. So let's listen to the vocal. Par la pensée d'une nuit, entourée de l'infini. You know, so there's a little T here that bugs me a bit, you know, so I'm just gonna select this, bring that down, instead of having my de-esser working too hard. Entourée de l'infini. That flows way better. There was an S somewhere. Entourée de l'infini. Ma main dans la sienne. All right, right here, la sienne. Okay, there's an S here that I want to bring down right away, and it's right here. So I'm just gonna select it, bring it down. Perfect. I make sure it sounds natural. Even here, this little S here, I think the de-esser can take care of this one. You know what? Let's do it manually. Right here. So I'm just going to bring that one down. Par la pensée d'une nuit. Now, again, I don't go crazy on this. I just bring down the obvious sibilants, the P's, the T's that are just a bit too much. And then a de-esser can take care of the rest. But sometimes I don't even need to add a de-esser. It depends on the vocal recording I'm dealing with. Hey, just a quick break here. I just want to thank a JZ Microphone for sponsoring this video. I've been working with JZ mics for years, like this V67, which is one of my favorite vocal mic. And I'm actually using this microphone as we speak. It's right here on top of me to capture my voice for my videos. They also have the black hole that is amazing, the BT202s that I use for drum overheads, the V47 that is also a great microphone. Now, if you're on the market for a great mic, you can use my coupon code Mixdown10. That will give you 10% off, and that is for a limited time only. And JZ Microphone is also in the middle of their summer sale until June 24th, 2025, and we're talking about up to 50% off on their microphones. And on top of that, you can use my code and get an additional 10%. That's pretty cool. So the link is down below. Now, let's get back to the video. The next step I do is to listen to some breaths that could be too loud. And this is something that can also hunt me down when working with compression afterwards, okay? I have a couple of breaths here that I want to tame down. There's one. And there's the second one. So if we solo this one. Now I have nothing against breaths. I'm not going to delete them. I just reduce them in level because I want to keep that vocal sound natural, and the breaths are part of a vocal sound. So I'm just going to select that breath and bring it down just a notch. See how that goes. Maybe a bit more. I still hear it, but it's not annoying, it doesn't distract me whatsoever. That's it, not more complicated than that, and I do it manually straight on the audio event. And by doing it this way in Cubase, it's a fast fix. There's also background noise, especially in between lines when there's a lot of silence, that you can clean up. You can do it manually, but there's also a little feature in Cubase that can be useful for that matter. So I'm going to select my audio event, go up to audio, down to advanced, and click on detect silence. That can be a useful tool, and this is mainly to detect all the silences you have in between the main lines, like the big silences, and you can adjust the threshold detection to your taste to detect those silences. And once you're done, you can just get rid of them simply. Or if you want to, you can just uncheck the strip silence, and that will only cut them out. So you can bring them down manually afterwards if you only want to bring them down and not cut them off. Okay, so this is up to you. So let me keep this one on, click on process, and there you go. They are all gone. Okay, in my case, it's not something I need on this vocal take, so I'm just going to bring it back to how it was, but this can be a practical tool in Cubase. Next is pitch correction. I always pitch correct my vocals before I start adding plugins and mix my vocal recording. So I'm going to double click on my audio event, go under Vary Audio, which is a manual pitch correction tool we have in Cubase, and I work with it all the time. Click on Edit Vary Audio. That will create some vocal notes that I'll be able to work with to manually pitch correct that vocal. Now, this vocal, for the most part, is pretty tight and good on pitch, so there's not a lot to do here. But I do this every time anyways, even if I have a good vocal recording. There's always little things that needs to be worked on and be corrected. Now, my approach when it comes to pitch correcting is not to select all of these all together and, apply pitch correction to 100% to the grid. That's not how I work. I use my ears more than anything else, and I only pitch correct the notes that are off to my taste, and that can be a distraction. So I want to avoid that, and that's why I like to do it manually, so I have full control on what needs to be corrected. Now, some will use plugins like Autotune, okay, which will do pitch correction automatically. There's nothing wrong with that. These plugins are pretty amazing to work with. On my end, I like to to do everything manually. However, working with both can be a very good approach also. You do like the hard work manually and the fine-tuning with a plugin like Autotune, for example. And Very Audio is an amazing tool. So I'm just going to bring those notes snap to the grid, but if I want them to be a bit more flexible, I can unsnap them by keeping my finger on Shift and move them around to my taste. But for now, I'm going to leave it this way. See how it sounds like. And there's that last note here that I want to tweak a bit from this point because the long note goes a bit sharp near the end of the take. So let me just... So this is a brief example on how I work inside Very Audio to manually pitch correct my vocals. And if you don't work in Cubase and you don't have this type of feature inside your DAW, you can work with a tool like Melodyne that will work perfectly for that matter. Something else I pay attention to before I start adding plugins and mix my vocals is to check and listen to the timing of the vocal to make sure that everything is up to par with the rhythmic and the tempo of the music. Now, there are several ways you can do it in the Cubase. One of them is to use Very Audio, and since we're still in Very Audio, let me show you how that works. And this is very practical if you need to just move one note around. Okay, so let's say I want to move this note right here. Okay, that last note here of the line, let's say that note is a bit late and I want to make it start sooner. I'm just going to extend the edge of that note to the left. And let's see how that sounds like. Okay, let's do it for this one also and this one. So by only moving these three notes, I was able to make that performance a bit more tight to the tempo of the song. But now that it's always a balance between what is tight and what feels good for the song. So I always use my ears and make judgment calls according to the feel also. And in this case, I think it was better as it was before, a bit more late, okay? But this is the type of thing I can do inside Very Audio when it comes to tweak the timing of a few notes. But a lot of times it's going to be block of lines that are going to be too rushy or too late. And what I do is I move them straight from the audio event itself. So let's check the end of that line here. Now again, on this recording, as it was for the pitch, the timing is very, very tight, okay? But there's that one line here that I can move around a bit to make it a bit more laid back. It sounds a bit rushy right now. Again, it's very subtle, but let me show you what I do in this case when it comes to a whole line. Okay, so let's say I want to move that whole block around. I'm not going to go inside Very Audio to do that, on every note. So I'm just going to select that whole block and move it to the right so it gets a bit more late. Now, if you want to know more about how I pitch correct vocals and keep them sounding natural, you have to watch this video. And I also have a question for you. Do you take the time to prep your vocal tracks before you start to mix? Let me know down below, and don't forget to share, like, and subscribe to this channel if you're not already. Until next time, take care and see you.